Hello everyone and welcome to week 13, and as it's Sunday evening already and many of you have already turned in your draft instruments, you probably noticed that I gave you a lot of feedback in the forum with relative to your instruments, and I really wanted to do that so that you get a sense of, first of all, the diversity of the instrument, and second of all, that you recognize the strong link that your instrument needs to have to your purpose and question in order to be able to answer both. So I'm really looking forward to your instruments this week, and we're getting ready for the methods to be handed in, and so I'm going to spend just a little bit of time just rehearsing what our methods are with case study and survey, so that we can just run through once again what each of those methods are and how we would put them together. Also to give you a reminder of where you find all of the resources for those methods. Finally, I want to, before we go into what we're talking about this week, I do want to say a word about the literature reviews. And the literature reviews, some of them had some issues with respect to how the streams were constructed. The idea of moving your search terms into categories and having those categories labeled as the streams is a really good idea, and so that approach is really solid. Where we got into a little bit of difficulty was where those streams were utilized in a way that sometimes were not central to what the purpose again was. The whole purpose, the whole objective of our literature review is not to get to the purpose. Many of you use the purpose as the objective of the literature review, and it's really not the purpose isn't the purpose. I guess that's kind of funny, isn't it? The purpose isn't the purpose. For the literature review, the reason we do the literature review is to construct a case for the need for the study, to construct a case for the gap in the literature. So if you recall the V's and so how we would want to construct topic to general to specific, and to say in each what is in the literature and what is not in the literature. The not in the literature, all rounded up for all three streams, gets us the gap, and that's really what we want to head toward. I gave you a lot of feedback about your literature reviews in the projects themselves. If you submitted, and several of you did, your introduction again, I didn't comment, I didn't read through if you've got a new introduction, I passed right by that because that wasn't what we were doing for last week. So all right, let's get started. And as I said, I really want to take a look one more time at survey, and that was 2 weeks ago, and then at case study, and case study was last week, where you can find your resources. So let's first take a look at survey. And one of the things that you want to do, whether you choose survey or whether you choose case study, is talk about whose method that you are using. So in this particular one, what we're doing is Dillman. Dillman for survey is an excellent choice. There are others, and if you choose another author, another researcher whose model of survey you're going to follow, that's great. You just need to provide what that model is. So if you look 2 weeks ago in week 10, you will find survey, and you will find a lot of information from Don Dillman's model. I happen to really like Dillman's model because I think just like Miriam for case study is very accessible, Dillman for survey is very accessible. So here I am on, let me see, what page am I? I'm not exactly sure. It's a 16-page, we're on page 3 of a 16-page article. And he is talking about here the cover letter. Now, a cover letter doesn't actually have to be a letter if you're doing an online survey. It's the introduction to it, and I'll show you an example in just a moment. Well, we can actually go to the example right now. Here is that in this particular example, it says, thank you for taking the time for completing the Quest Initial Training Survey. This survey will help us to evaluate how well we're doing in the initial training process and what improvements can be made to help Quest continue to be a strong company for the future. So what Dillman does here is say what we want to first or at the end thank our participants for taking their time. Their time is valuable. Then we want to say give them some intrinsic reward because we're unable to give them a new color TV or iPad, and so we are going to instead thank them and then give them that intrinsic reward of this will contribute to in the very positive way. All right, so that's what the cover letter is expected to do, and the cover letter in this model should be sent in advance. So you're going to send the initial email or cover letter in advance, and it's accompanied again with the request, the due date, because you want to remind your person who's going to be doing, even if it's an online survey, it's only going to be open for 1 week or 2 weeks or 10 days or whatever you say. Why the respondent is chosen. You were a member of this or that and can contribute greatly. The usefulness of the survey, that it's confidential and actually we can say anonymous, willingness to answer the questions, etc. So we send an approach email or letter on day 1 that we open our survey. Day 4, we send the questionnaire and the cover letter, or we send the link to perhaps SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics. Day 11, you send your first follow-up. Thank you very much for, if you've already completed the survey, I truly appreciate it and this will benefit X or Y. If you have yet to do that, just click on this link if it's an online survey, or complete the attached email or attached questionnaire. Perhaps if you've sent it via mail, that you have a self-addressed stamped envelope that is helpful for just complete it, put it right back in the envelope, and then on your way. And then perhaps day 25, if it's going to be that long, you will send a follow-up. You might have only sent the first one and you're not going to do a follow-up. So this is Dillman's process. You want to describe in your method section Dillman or whatever you are doing. So let's take a look at the example instrument then. And you'll provide that example instrument, the instrument you just turned in will be attached in the method section once again. All right, so here is what this would be. Going strongly disagree, 1. Notice that the low end is 1 and the high end, strongly agree, the positive, is 4 or 5 or 6, whatever Likert scale you choose. The most common, of course, is 5, and then the 3 would be neutral. If you've chosen 4 or 6, you've chosen to not have a neutral, and you want to move people off the the fence and to really make a decision. There are pluses and minuses for doing that, so just think about which you might want to do for your survey instrument. Okay, and then let's go to case study, and we're going to use Miriam for case study. Miriam, if we look at this is the analysis. When we're talking about case study, first of all, we're going to be talking about interview as a primary data collection. However, that's not for case study the only means of data collection. You might use, for example, a number of different artifacts. Artifacts could be records. For example, they could be medical records, they could be student records, they could be a record of a qual or checkoff sheet. If you are Brian has the Hanford group who are going to be qualifying, and so does Brendolyn, for people who are qualifying for nuclear reactor operators. And so the checkoffs could be records that you might use if you're doing case study. There are other artifacts. You might have people who are going to be doing a journal, keeping a journal for you, and that can be also a means of data collection. So there are lots of possible data collection. When we're talking about once we have collected our data, then if for our interview data, we're going to have someone transcribe that data, and then we will have a transcript. Some of you talked about a scissor approach. You're going to take a scissor approach to the data analysis. Another approach that Miriam uses is a highlighter approach, and you might use a yellow highlighter or an orange highlighter, and then you have those data bits that you're going to collect together. Put the blue ones together, put the yellow or greenish ones together, put the pink ones together. We don't yet know what that picture is going to be, but once we have them together, we can look and see what we have in our basket and call that a category and label that category. Then we have brought some order to our data, which is called data reduction. And we want to continue. Sometimes we want to subsume different categories. And we do that by bringing our categories into a common theme. We might say that this category and this category and this category are all part of one theme. And that's how we would conduct our data analysis for case study. Okay, so that gives us a sense again of, and we find case study resources in last week. So the last 2 weeks will give us a lot of resources on those two particular methods. A few of you are using some other method, and I've tried to provide you with some resources for your methods as well. All right, now let's move on to this week. We're kind of stepping away from our research and talking about what we might use for exit strategies for either our field research project, which is what we're talking about here. We're building the proposal for the field research project, or we've got some other strategies. Before we go very far, I'm going to just bring up the poster session, which is a brand new opportunity for people. And I think this is going to come up. Let's see if it does. Maybe it is not going to come up. If not, I will repost this And it looks like that we are going to have some difficulty with that. Let's just go back. So I'll repost that so that we are able to take a look at the poster session. And let me just make sure that it didn't come up elsewhere so that I can help you look at that. No, it didn't. Oh, darn it. Okay, well, oh, yes, no, it still didn't, did it? Okay, well, you know what, I will reload it and so that you can look at it this week, and just I'll describe it here. So, the field research project and other exit strategies. The first, of course, is the thesis. The thesis is going to take you the longest. It's the most involved. It is really contributing to the literature as opposed to a more applied project, as really all of our others are. The field research project, which is what most of you would be working on right now, is preparing a proposal and then getting ready to actually conduct that project. Or there are 3 different opportunities in our program that allow you to do what we are referring to as a poster session. And that's what I wanted to show you, and we'll have to do the link elsewhere and for you to be able to actually see it. So the poster session is going to use a Prezi and focus on, and Prezi, if you are unfamiliar with Prezi, is much like a pretty fancy PowerPoint. It's a means of focusing on a model, and then, for example, a model that many of you have already spent a lot of time on is the Human Performance Technology model, and you're familiar with that and actually have conducted a project with it. And then there is the evaluation model that Dr. Lindbeck uses in her 6633 class. So those 2 models and the research proposal, either qual or quant, that you're doing right now, could be the model that's used in this Prezi poster session. What you would do then is focus on, for example, if we use our research project model, the very first beginning would be to identify a topic. Remember back in our first week we did that. We identify a topic, we move on to a problem, and so the problem then, you would then focus in on what a problem is, what a researchable problem is in our model, and how you identify and craft your, or find your problem, and then you would, and of course we do that through the literature review, and then you would pull out and say, for example, and use what you are doing right now, what you are using for your problem statement, and then talk about, give a context of your study and talk about your problem. The same way that you would begin with perhaps the environmental scan or environmental analysis in the HPT model, and begin then at phase 1 in the evaluation project. So you pull in and out of the Prezi model and discuss then what your example is. Then you would go to the next phase of the model and talk about what that phase is, how you conduct it, and then pull back out, talk about, and go to what, for example, what you are doing in your model and did for your project. And so you proceed. If you had an HPT model, you might close with the interventions. If you have the evaluation project, you might close with the final wrap-up of the evaluation. If you are doing our proposal and you haven't actually gathered the data and analyzed them, then you would conclude by a timeline for the project you're proposing. So that's how we would do that, and it's a very effective exit strategy. It's in some ways it relates to the case study that the folks in business use. So that's a possibility. So think about what is important for you to do, and by that I mean what's important for you for your career path, for if you want to pursue a PhD or EDD, if what would get you what you most want. Which of these options is the better approach for you? We also have published scholarship that is quite appropriate, and some students have chosen to do that, publish a paper on one of their projects, or to review a selection of student work in a portfolio. We're still ironing this out. It has had mixed success, and we're not real pleased with the outcomes at this point. We also have a comprehensive examination. That, for most of us, is a last resort. We feel like that this is doesn't really get you anything except something you can put on your shelf. And probably most people would put it in the round file when they're done with it, because there's nothing really that applies to anything else. It's a summary, it's an exam, and so it's not our favorite. I think that most of us would really try and have your capstone be something that you can put in your portfolio and that you're proud of and that you use to advance your career. So right now the poster session seems to be the most viable, so that's what we are advocating. So think about that. Comment on your methodology sections this week, and if you want to add a question or a thought about your exit strategy, we'll entertain a conversation about that too. All right, let's get started. This will be the last week that we're talking about our projects. We are going to be going from here to next week, where we talk about APA. Then we have a Thanksgiving week, and after that you turn in your proposal. I am going to be open for any questions that you might have, so just let me know what they might be, and in the forum I'm happy to answer them, or we can answer them offline individually. Entirely up to you. So again, good work. This is an iterative process. It isn't intuitive, and you are making progress. Just know you are all making progress, and that's the important thing. All right, see you online.